Hello everyone, and welcome back to Report of Silver. Your trusted source for expert silver and gold market analysis. On this channel, we break down the biggest developments in the precious metals market and explain what they really mean for investors using simple, easy-to-understand language. Today's story could be one of the most important silver stories of the year because it connects technology, global competition, industrial demand, and the future price of silver in one powerful way. Here's the big headline. A new battery breakthrough out of China could change everything for silver. If this battery technology performs the way early reports suggest, it may dramatically increase future silver demand, and the silver market has not fully priced that in yet. That is why this matters. We are not just talking about another small industrial use for silver. We may be talking about a major shift in how much silver the world needs in the next decade. The announcement came on April 14th from a Chinese company called Greater Bay Technology, a battery startup backed by GAC Group, which is one of China's largest automakers. The company announced that it had successfully produced its first A-sample all-solid-state battery cells from a production line in Guangzhou. That may sound technical, but here is why it matters. This means the technology has moved beyond the lab and into actual manufacturing. That is a huge milestone. For years, solid-state batteries have been viewed as the future of electric vehicles. They promise higher energy density, faster charging, better safety, and longer battery life compared to current lithium-ion batteries. The biggest challenge has always been mass production. Many companies have promised breakthroughs, but commercialization timelines kept getting pushed back. Now that timeline may be changing. And that is where silver enters the story. Some of the most advanced solid-state battery designs, especially those being developed by companies like Samsung SDI, use silver carbon composite anodes. That means silver becomes part of the battery architecture itself, not just a supporting material. According to public estimates, that design could require roughly 750 grams to 1 kilogram of silver per electric vehicle, compared with only about 25 to 50 grams used in today's traditional EV batteries. Think about that for a moment. That is not a small increase. That is a 15x to 30x increase in silver usage per vehicle. And if that technology scales globally, the impact on silver demand could be enormous. Now, to be fair, Greater Bay Technology has not publicly confirmed whether its own battery design uses silver in the same way. Their chemistry appears different, but that may not even matter. Why? Because competition changes timelines. If one company accelerates production, competitors respond faster. That means companies like Toyota and Samsung SDI may now push harder to commercialize their own designs sooner, and those designs could use much more silver. That is how industries change. One breakthrough creates pressure. Pressure creates competition. Competition creates faster adoption. And faster adoption creates new demand. That is why this battery announcement is bigger than it first appears. At the same time, silver is already trading near major levels, around $80 per ounce, and many investors believe it still remains undervalued relative to its long-term fundamentals. Industrial demand keeps rising. Supply remains tight. Multiple reports have shown continued silver deficits. Now add a possible battery demand boom to that picture. You begin to understand why analysts are paying close attention. This is not just a technology story. This is a potential silver demand story. And it may only be the beginning. To understand why this battery story could become so important for silver, we first need to understand what makes solid-state batteries different from the batteries we use today. Most electric vehicles currently rely on traditional lithium-ion batteries, which use a liquid electrolyte to move energy between the battery's components. That technology has worked well and helped launch the electric vehicle revolution, but it has limitations. Charging speed is limited, battery degradation happens over time, and in rare cases, overheating can lead to safety issues. That is why battery manufacturers around the world have spent years chasing the next major breakthrough, and many believe solid-state technology is that breakthrough. A solid-state battery replaces the liquid electrolyte with a solid material, which immediately creates several advantages. First, energy density increases, meaning the battery can store more power in the same amount of space. That could allow electric vehicles to travel much farther on a single charge. Second, charging speeds can improve dramatically, potentially reducing charging times from hours to minutes. Third, safety improves because solid-state designs reduce the risk of thermal runaway, which is the dangerous overheating problem sometimes seen in conventional battery systems. This is exactly what makes the recent announcement from Greater Bay Technology so important. The company reported energy densities ranging from 260 to 500 watt-hours per kilogram, which is significantly higher than many current battery systems. It also claimed strong, fast-charging performance and successful safety tests involving puncture resistance, pressure testing, and thermal shock. In simple terms, they are saying this battery is safer, stronger, and more efficient. And if that proves true at scale, the entire electric vehicle industry will move quickly. That is where the pressure begins. For years, Toyota has been viewed as one of the leaders in solid-state battery development. Their public timeline suggested mass production around 2027 or 2028. But this new announcement from China appears to move that timeline forward. Instead of waiting years, the market is now looking at a company already producing sample cells today. That changes investor expectations immediately. And whenever timelines compress, supply chains start reacting. That includes silver. One of the most interesting details comes from Samsung SDI, which has publicly discussed a solid-state battery design using a silver-carbon composite anode. Analysts estimate that such a design could require approximately 5 grams of silver per cell, and with around 200 cells in a typical electric vehicle battery pack, that adds up to roughly 1 kilogram of silver per vehicle. That is extraordinary. To put that into perspective, today's electric vehicles usually use around 25 to 50 grams of silver, mainly in switches, sensors, and electrical contacts. So, if solid-state designs using silver become standard, silver demand per vehicle could increase by as much as 30 times. That is not just a demand increase. That is a demand shock. And remember, the global auto market produces tens of millions of vehicles every year. Even if only a portion of those transition to solid-state batteries, the impact on silver demand would be massive. Now, some people may say, but what if China's battery design does not use silver? That is a fair question. But the answer is, it may not matter. Why? Because this announcement forces every competitor to move faster. It puts pressure on Toyota. It puts pressure on Samsung SDI. It puts pressure on every battery developer racing toward commercialization. And some of those competing technologies absolutely use silver. That means whether silver is directly inside this Chinese battery or not, the competitive race itself may still drive silver demand much higher. That is why this story is bigger than one company or one announcement. It signals that the solid-state battery era may be arriving sooner than expected. And if that happens, silver may become one of its biggest beneficiaries. Now let's connect this battery story to something else that has been happening quietly in the silver market: China's increasing interest in silver. Over the past several years, many analysts have noticed that China appears to be positioning itself very carefully around strategic metals, especially those tied to future technologies. That includes lithium, copper, rare earth elements, and increasingly silver. When viewed separately, these moves may not seem unusual, but when you connect them to battery innovation, electric vehicles, and industrial growth, the bigger picture becomes much clearer. China understands something very important. The next global economic race is not just about software or finance. It is about control of critical resources. Countries that control the materials needed for advanced manufacturing, clean energy, and next-generation transportation will have a major strategic advantage. Silver fits directly into that category because it is not only a precious metal, it is one of the most industrially important metals in the world. Silver is the most electrically conductive metal on Earth. It is also highly reflective, highly durable, and essential in thousands of applications. It is used in solar panels, electric vehicles, military electronics, semiconductors, medical technology, and telecommunications infrastructure. That means if a country expects rapid industrial growth in those sectors, it naturally needs more silver. Now look at what China is doing. China is already the world's largest electric vehicle market. It is one of the world's biggest solar panel manufacturers. It dominates large parts of the battery supply chain. And now a Chinese company, Greater Bay Technology, is moving aggressively into solid-state battery production. Do you see the pattern? This is not random. It is strategic. If China believes solid-state batteries are coming faster than expected, then securing silver becomes even more important. And this may help explain why silver demand appears to be strengthening in ways that are not always obvious on the surface. Because not all silver buying is speculative. Some of it is strategic, some of it is industrial, and some of it may be forward-looking accumulation. That matters because silver is already facing supply challenges. The market has been in a documented structural deficit for several years. That means global demand has exceeded global mine production. Every year that deficit continues, inventories tighten a little more. Now imagine adding a major new source of industrial demand, like solid-state batteries, into that equation. That changes everything. It means countries and corporations may begin competing more aggressively for available silver. And whenever competition for a scarce asset increases, prices tend to follow. This is why many silver analysts believe the market may be underestimating what is happening. The focus has often been on short-term price movements. People watch daily charts. They react to Federal Reserve comments. They focus on inflation reports. Those things matter, but they are not the whole story. The bigger story may be industrial transformation. The world is becoming more electric, more digital, more automated, and more dependent on advanced energy systems. Silver sits at the center of all of that. That is why this battery breakthrough matters beyond just electric vehicles. It reinforces a broader trend. Silver is becoming more strategically important every year. And when a metal becomes strategically important, governments notice. Manufacturers notice. Investors notice. That can create a powerful long-term shift in demand. So when people ask why China may be accumulating silver, or why silver demand seems stronger than headlines suggest, the answer may be right in front of us. It is not just about today's needs. It is about preparing for tomorrow's technologies. And that is exactly what this battery announcement may be signaling. The battery story alone is important, but what makes this even more powerful is that it is not happening in isolation. This is part of a much larger trend. Across multiple industries, entirely new technologies are beginning to scale at the same time, and many of them depend heavily on silver. That is why this could become a major long-term demand story. It is not one catalyst. It is several catalysts arriving together. Let's start with electric vehicles. We already know that EV adoption continues growing worldwide, and companies like Tesla and BYD are leading that transition. Every electric vehicle already uses more silver than a traditional gasoline vehicle because of its electronics, sensors, battery systems, and electrical connections. Estimates suggest today's EVs use around 25 to 50 grams of silver each. That alone is significant when millions of vehicles are produced every year. But if the industry shifts towards solid-state batteries using silver-intensive designs, that number could increase dramatically. Now think about scale. If even a fraction of global EV production moves toward those higher silver battery systems, annual silver demand could rise by millions of additional ounces. And that is only one industry. Next, look at air mobility. Companies like Joby Aviation and Uber are preparing to launch commercial electric air taxi services. These aircraft, often called eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff and landing vehicles, operate on extremely high voltage systems. They require lightweight, highly efficient electrical components, and silver becomes very valuable in those environments because of its unmatched conductivity and reliability. Analysts estimate that a single eVTOL aircraft may require 5 to 15 kilograms of silver depending on its design. That is far more than a car. And according to industry forecasts, thousands of these aircraft could be deployed over the next decade. Again, this is not theory anymore. This is commercialization. The first services are already being prepared. Now move to space. SpaceX continues expanding its Starlink satellite network at an incredible pace. Thousands of satellites are already in orbit and many more are planned. Every satellite uses silver in its electronics, communication systems, and energy components. On its own, this may seem like a smaller demand category, but combined with everything else, it adds more pressure to an already tight market. That is the key point. Silver demand is not rising because of one invention. It is rising because multiple industries are all growing at once. Electric vehicles, solid-state batteries, solar panels, artificial intelligence infrastructure, air mobility, satellite networks, military technology, advanced electronics. Everywhere you look, silver is there, and yet silver supply does not grow that quickly. Mining takes years. Permitting new mines takes even longer. Ore grades have been declining in many regions. That means supply cannot easily respond to sudden demand increases. This creates what economists call a structural imbalance. Demand rises faster than supply, and when that happens long enough, prices usually adjust. That is why many silver analysts remain bullish despite short-term volatility. Yes, silver prices move up and down. Yes, markets can be frustrating. But the industrial story keeps getting stronger. And this battery announcement from Greater Bay Technology may simply be another signal that the next wave of demand is arriving faster than expected. When we bring all of these developments together, one conclusion becomes very difficult to ignore. The silver market may be entering a completely new phase. For years, many investors viewed silver mainly as a precious metal, something connected to inflation, monetary policy, and safe haven investing. And while those factors still matter, silver today is becoming much more than that. It is increasingly becoming a strategic industrial metal, essential to the technologies shaping the future of the global economy. That is what makes this moment so important. The recent battery breakthrough from Greater Bay Technology is not just about one company in China. It is a signal that innovation is accelerating. Technologies that once seemed years away are now moving closer to commercialization. Solid-state batteries are one example. But as we discussed, the same pattern is happening across electric vehicles, autonomous systems, air mobility, satellites, and clean energy infrastructure. All of these sectors are expanding, and all of them require silver. That creates a powerful long-term demand foundation. At the same time, silver supply remains constrained. Global mine production cannot increase overnight. New discoveries are becoming more difficult. Existing mines face rising costs, environmental restrictions, and declining ore quality. Even if producers want to increase supply, it takes years to bring meaningful new production online. That means if demand accelerates faster than expected, the market could tighten very quickly. And that is where price becomes important. Today, silver continues trading far below where many long-term investors believe it should be based on historical valuation and current fundamentals. Some analysts point out that silver remains well below its inflation-adjusted highs. Others focus on the repeated supply deficits. Now, if industrial demand begins rising faster because of new technologies like solid-state batteries, that valuation gap could become harder to ignore. But investors should also remain realistic. This does not mean silver moves straight up. Markets never work that way. Silver is one of the most volatile major commodities in the world. It can rise sharply and it can fall sharply. Headlines can create excitement. Macroeconomic fears can create pullbacks. Interest rates, currency strength, and geopolitical events will continue influencing short-term price action. That is why patience matters. Long-term silver investing has always rewarded those who focus on the bigger picture rather than daily noise. And right now, that bigger picture looks increasingly strong. We have rising industrial demand. We have constrained supply. We have technological acceleration. We have growing global competition for strategic resources. And now, we may be seeing early signs that markets are beginning to recognize silver's changing role. That is why I believe this story matters. Not because one battery company made an announcement, but because that announcement fits into a much larger trend. A trend where silver becomes more essential every year. A trend where physical demand becomes harder to ignore. And a trend where future prices may eventually need to reflect that new reality. So the question investors should ask is not simply, what is silver doing today? The better question is, what could silver look like 5 years from now if these trends continue? That is where the opportunity may be. This is Report of Silver. If you value honest silver and gold analysis, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share your opinion in the comments. Do you believe battery technology could become silver's biggest price catalyst of the next decade? I'll see you in the next report.